All right. Welcome to Meet with an Expert Student Loan Repayment Plans. Tonight's presentation will focus on student loans and the information that you need to know about repayment plans. My name is Shalise Connors. I'm the director of the Student Money Management Center. And let me begin by welcoming all of our students on this information session, particularly those who might be graduating this December. Congratulations. It's a huge milestone. The Student Money Management Center serves students on all three of our campuses. We are an amazing resource. We are free, and even after you graduate and you become a wonderful alum, definitely take advantage of the Student Money Management Center. We bring you programs such as the one this evening and so much more throughout the academic year. So if you want to stay in touch with our programming, our outreach, and just really cool engagement we have on social media, make sure you follow at TW Maroon Money on Instagram and Facebook. Online with us this evening are Gabby Pringle Owanaka. She is our Student Money Management Center Assistant Director. She's going to be monitoring the chat. And then we have our experts from the TW Office of Financial Aid, Brandy Henry, and we have Jeff Scott. Our featured presenter this evening is Sergio Gonzalez with Sallie Mae, and I'll introduce him here in a moment. We do have a few other housekeeping tips to pass along. Like I said, we are going to be using the chat feature for questions and answers. We will pause as necessary during the presentation to answer any questions. And sometimes if you want to unmute and go ahead and ask the question as well, we'll take those live questions as well. We ask that you be sure to switch your view to speaker view so that you can see the speaker and the slide presentation throughout the slide deck throughout the presentation. And this can be found in the upper right-hand corner. It could also be on the side of your screen. And students, if you would like to ask a question that contains personal information about your financial aid situation, about your student loans, or about your current TW account, we ask that you message directly one of the financial aid counselors, and that would be either Brandy or Jeff. So please chat directly with them and direct your message directly to them. So we are very fortunate to have Sergio with us this evening. He has been in higher education since 1995. He joined Sallie Mae in 2005 and is responsible for supporting colleges, universities, high schools, and college readiness organizations throughout Texas as well as in New Mexico. He is fluent in Spanish, lives in Houston with his wife and their dog, and he's spending the evening with us. So thank you so much, Sergio, for being here, and I will turn the program over to you.
Thank you, Shalise. Appreciate the introduction. Let me share my screen here. Perfect. Here we are. Can you see my screen okay? Perfect. Good. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. I know it's Tuesday, it's 6:30, and this is probably the last thing you want to do, but I think it's great that you joined. For those of you who may be graduating, as Shalise said, congratulations. And for those of you who may still have a year or so to go, that's quite all right. I think it's never too early to learn about repayment and what happens. So today, I'm going to talk to you specifically about life after college, how to prepare to go into repayment. We'll discuss your loan portfolio, the different type of loans that you may have borrowed. We'll talk about when payment is going to come due for your loans. And if you have any difficulties in making payments on your loans, what are ways that you can postpone payments for a period of time? And then we'll talk about the different repayment options that are available for you. One size doesn't fit all, so you have quite a few options that are available for you. And then at the end, we'll provide you with some resources to help you along the way. So with that said, why don't we go ahead and get started? And I want to make sure that you understand that there's two different types of student loans. There's federal loans, and then there's private loans. And I want to make sure that you understand that they're not the same type of loan. So what is the difference between the two? Kind of think of it this way. So a key difference is federal is all government-based loans, where private is going to be a loan from a lender or a bank. So that's the big difference between the two. The majority of your loans is most likely federal. I think all of you, if not the majority of you who are on this call, may have borrowed a federal loan, and some of you may have borrowed a private loan. Again, the federal loan is from the federal government. They offer you fixed interest rates, and it requires you to file a FAFSA, as you're probably well aware, right? Where private loans, again, supplied by a lender or a bank, they offer both options of variable and fixed rates, and then may require a co-signer as well. But those are the big differences between a federal loan and a private loan. And I'm going to focus primarily on your federal, and we'll touch base a little bit on private in case you borrowed that as well. So let's begin with the federal loans. So for my undergraduate students who may be on the call, these are the two typical federal loans for students. They're the subsidized loan and the unsubsidized loan. So what is the difference between the two? For a subsidized loan, this is available for undergraduate students, and you have to demonstrate financial need in order to qualify for this type of loan, right? The great thing about this loan is that no interest is accruing because the federal government is paying the interest for you while you're enrolled in school at least half time, during periods of deferment, and during your grace period, right? So this is the best loan to take out if you're needing to take out a federal student loan. If you don't qualify for a subsidized loan because you don't have any financial need, then all of it or a part of it may be in an unsubsidized loan. So the difference here is that the federal government is not paying the interest for you while you are enrolled in school or during periods of deferment or grace period. Interest is accruing as soon as the money is sent to the school. So with this type of loan, you don't demonstrate financial need. It doesn't matter if you have financial need or not. You will get all of it unsubsidized, right? So those are the two big differences between one or the other. Again, subsidized, if you qualify, best option first, and then the unsubsidized would be the second best. And for my graduate students who may be on the call, these are the different loans that you can borrow under the federal loan program. For graduate students, you'll have the unsubsidized, no difference there, same kind of idea as the undergraduate students, right? It's not need-based, and no interest is being paid by the government. Interest is accruing as soon as the money is sent to the school. And then you also have a Graduate Plus loan that's also similar to an unsubsidized in that it's only available to graduate students. You don't have to demonstrate financial need, and interest is also accruing on this loan as soon as sent to the school as well. But these are the common loans that you've borrowed under the federal loan program, right? So for those of you who said, well, I still need additional financing, and I found that through a private student loan. Remember, these are different type of loans. This is a loan designed specifically to help you finance your college education for any gaps that remains after you've exhausted grants and scholarships and federal loans, that this may be an option that you've chosen, right? It's again funded by banks and lenders to help you finance your education. And then you can borrow up to the cost of attendance, right? You can never go over that cost of attendance. And financial aid would be the office who would certify this loan and get the money to you as well, right? So that's a private loan. For undergraduate students, you may have required a co-signer because maybe you don't have enough credit established. So maybe your mom or dad or someone else that co-sign for you may be your co-signer on this loan. But again, this is a loan that's going to be provided to you by a bank or a lender, but very different than federal loans. So when it comes to loan payment, where are you in the process, right? So if you're about to graduate, let's say that either you're graduating this December in the fall or you're graduating in May of next year, then you are close to being at your separation period. So what that means is you're close to graduating. And what that means further is that when you graduate, and leave the school, you're going to have a 6 months grace period where this is a period of time where you can kind of get yourself together and make sure that you understand what repayment options you have available for yourself, budget yourself accordingly, because now you're going to have a new expense in your budget, which is going to be your student loan payments. And you just want to make sure that you're fully prepared and ready to go, right? So while you've been in school, on your federal loans, you're able to defer all those loans until after you've graduated, right? For private loans, those may be a little bit different. Some private loans offer you the option of making payments while you're in school or deferring. So if you chose to make payments while you're in school, then while you've been in school, you're having to make payments, and you're going to continue to make those payments during your grace period. And then after your grace period, then you go into full principal and interest on your loans, right? So do you know the difference between your federal and your private? Again, both federal and private have a 6 months grace period. So again, that's the time where you're going to prepare to go into full principal and interest 6 months after that. I know it's a lot, so feel free to take a deep breath. I know you're thinking, gosh, I don't even know how much I borrowed, what the interest rate may be, what is my payment going to look like. So we're going to go through all of that in just a minute. But I want to make sure that you understand terminology when it comes to student loans, right? So principal and interest, principal is basically the amount that you've borrowed plus any unpaid interest to that loan that's being added to it, right? Interest is basically what the lender's charging you to use their money, right? So those are some common terminologies. Some other ones that I think it's important for you to understand is interest capitalization. So this happens when unpaid interest is added to the principal amount that you borrowed, right? And I'm going to show you an example of that because I want to make sure you understand how that works. And then repayment incentives, these are different things to help you want to make your payments on time. So they're incentives to make sure that you make your payments on time and that you make them successfully, right? And they can be in the form of interest rate reductions. They can be in the form of credit loans, credit to loan balances, or other benefits as well. So you want to look at those benefits because you want to take advantage of those because that can either help you reduce your rate even further or give you some sort of a credit on your loans as well. And I'll share in just a minute what those repayment incentives are for your federal loans and most commonly for private loans as well. But let me talk a little bit about interest capitalization because I want to make sure you understand how this works. And for those of you who are still in school, who may still have a little bit more time before you graduate to go into repayment, this is probably more for you because for those of you who may be graduating, may be a little too late to have this discussion. I always like having this discussion when you first begin so that you know what the benefits are of you making payments while you're in school, right? So let's look at this example. This is a student who borrowed $20,000 at a rate of 8% of interest, right? It's going to take them 10 years to pay this back after their grace period, right? So let's look at the far left, right? So 20,000 is your total principal amount that you've borrowed. And remember, interest is accruing during this time if you're not making any payments whatsoever. So the total interim interest outstanding or capitalized is about $6,500 there that you see in the pink, right? So together, that is a total principal at repayment. And then as you're paying your loan for the 10 years that you're accumulating, interest is going to be about $12,000, a little bit over $12,000, which is in the dark blue section there, right? So that's an example of a student who didn't make any payments at all while they were in school, right? The other graph that you see on the right-hand side, 20,000 is what you borrowed, and then this student chose to make interest payments while they were in school, so there is no interim interest outstanding there. All that's left is what you paid for the 10 years that you were in repayment, which is a little bit over $9,000, right? But look at the savings that you have while you made payments while you're in school versus not making payments while you're in school. So you see, it makes a difference being able to make payments. You're not obligated to do so on your federal loans. You can defer those until after you graduate, but any little bit helps to reduce some of that interest that's occurring on those loans. So I always encourage students that if you're able to make payments here and there, try to do so that minimizes some of that interest that's occurring on the loan. Loan payments. So know what you owe, right? So you want to make sure that you make a list of all your student loans that you've borrowed. Are they federal loans? Are they private loans? Write down your servicer's information and contact information. I would put all your loan documents that you've ever received from the federal government, from financial aid, from your private lender. Keep it all in a file, centrally located so you know where to access this so that when you go into repayment, there are no surprises whatsoever. And then find out what loans are going to enter repayment and when, right? What is your monthly payment going to look like? How do I budget accordingly? When are they due? So these are things that you want to make sure that you're making a list of so that you're fully prepared to go into full principal and interest repayment. So you're probably thinking, well, I don't even know how much I borrowed. Who did I borrow it from? Is it federal? Is it private? So if you're not sure how much you borrowed or who you borrowed from, this is where you want to start, right? So this is where you find your loans. So any federal loans that you've ever borrowed from the federal government, you're going to go to studentaid.gov, and in there, you're going to use that same user ID and password that you used when you filed your FAFSA. So it's that same user ID and password, which is great, right? So you go in there, and then it's going to tell you who your servicer is, how much you borrowed, when you borrowed it, at what interest rate you borrowed that from, and the contact information of your servicer as well. So all that information is going to be there. So you'll know exactly how much federal loans you borrowed, right? But your private loans, remember, that's not a federal loan, so that's not going to be found in studentaid.gov. And if you're not sure if you borrowed a private loan, then my recommendation would be to go to look at your credit report at annualcreditreport.com and see if there's any educational loans that you borrowed that were private loans while you've been in school, right? So that's where I would go for private loans. And I would probably do a shout out here for students as well, is that, and I'm sure Shalise and team and financial aid have probably conveyed this to you, that it is very important that you on an annual basis check your credit. It's free by law that you do that on an annual basis. So every 12 months, you're able to request your credit report. And why do you want to do that? You want to do that because you want to make sure that there are no discrepancies in your credit, that everything looks accurate, and that you haven't been a victim of identity theft, right? Because when that happens, very, very bad things occur, and it's so hard to get that fixed. So you want to make sure that you're monitoring your credit on an annual basis. And again, you can do that at annualcreditreport.com. It's free, no cost whatsoever. And then we created some tools to help you track your loans. Um, you can use the QR code there or go to salliemae.com/student loan checklist. But this is a great way to figure out which of these are federal loans, which of these are private loans, who your servicer is, put their contact information, the amount that you borrowed, the interest rate. Does it have a grace period, yes or no? And then when do you go into repayment? So it just kind of helps you to stay organized. It's a pre-fillable PDF document. So by all means, feel free to use this if this helps you to get organized and get prepared to go into repayment as well. All right, repayment options. So I talked to you in the beginning that one size does not fit all, right? So I want to make sure that you understand what the options you have on your federal loan programs. So if you do nothing at all during your grace period and you don't choose a specific option, the federal government will automatically put you in a standard repayment term. And a standard repayment term is a 10-year term where you make a fixed amount monthly for 10 years, right? It is the overall lowest cost of all the repayment options because it has the shortest repayment term, right? So that is automatic. You're going to be put into this option if you don't choose anything else, right? You also have what is called the graduated repayment plan option as well. So this is also a 10-year term, but with this one, think of it kind of a balloon effect, right? You start with small payments first, and then gradually start building to larger payments because you got to finish paying this off in 10 years. How students utilize this specific repayment plan option is that maybe you have maybe higher interest rate debt that you want to pay off first and not worry so much on your federal loans and making so much payments on that because those rates are much lower. Then maybe you want to do a graduate payment plan where you start with small payments first and then build up to larger payments. But remember, you got to finish paying this off in 10 years, right? So it is going to be a balloon effect on the graduated repayment plan. Probably the most popular one for students who borrow more than $25,000 is the extended repayment plan. So instead of 10 years, this extends it to 25 years, right? So let me give you an example. And I'm going to give you a big number, so don't get scared. So let's say that you borrowed $100,000 in undergrad and graduate school, right? That's what it totals out to. Or maybe you go to law school or medical school or whatever the case may be. So your debt is $100,000. So if you do that standard term, that payment is going to be close to about $1,200 a month for 10 years, right? So that may not be as easy to do. So with the extended repayment plan, instead of 10 years, it's 25 years. So that same example of your $1,200 payment, cuts in half. So it gets down to $600 a month for 25 years. So what's the positive? The positive is that your payments are more manageable, right? That you're able to make that payment on a monthly basis. The negative, that if it takes you 25 years to pay that off, that $100,000 that you borrowed will become about $200,000 because it takes you 25 years to pay it off. But I got to tell you that there is no negative impact if you want to pay this off sooner than later. So maybe your goal is, well, I can't do it in 10 years, but I can probably do it in 15 years to pay this off. That if you wanted to pay this off sooner than later, you can, and there are no penalties whatsoever for you doing that. The other option is the extended graduated plan. Similar to the graduated that we talked about before, but instead of 10 years, it's 25 years, same concept. Start with small payments and then gradually build up to larger payments and pay that off in 25 years, right? So those are the repayment plan options available for you. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the income-driven options that you have available for you. And let me caveat this by saying that there has been a lot of litigation on this. So some of these plans are under injunction by a federal court, that the Department of Education has been limited to what they can do with these plans. So specifically, the SAVE plan that you see there, which is a Saving on Valuable Education plan, this was the newest reiteration of income-driven options. Well, this has been put on hold, so you may not qualify for this particular plan. And some of the others have also been put into that same injunction from the federal court, specifically the pay as you earn plan and the income contingent plan. And specifically under the option of forgiveness, there's litigation on that. So you may not benefit from some of these plans, but you want to make sure that you keep up to date with this stuff. Going to studentaid.gov, that site that we talked about earlier, in there, it'll tell you where this is at and where it's headed. And not to get political, but when there's new administration in, they may have different ideas as well. So that's why you want to make sure that you stay up to date with what's happening with different repayment plan options and loan forgiveness, because it may be here today, it may be gone tomorrow, or maybe it's expanded even further. It just depends on what they want to do with these particular repayment plans. So again, just make sure you stay up to date with these plans and find the one that's going to be the best option for you. But all these income-driven options are based basically on your income, right? So they're looking at your income and they're looking at your household size to determine what is the payment that you can make on a monthly basis. It's usually about 20 to 25 year repayment term on these as well. And then normally after so many years, whatever balance remains, the federal government would forgive. But again, that's what's in injunction now. So that may not be the case, right? But these options are available for you. It's just the forgiveness part of it that may not be an option moving forward. And then federal direct consolidation that you see there, probably not as popular as it was back in the day, because back in the day, students were able to choose what lender they wanted from different banks like Chase and Wells Fargo and Bank of America. And the government kind of took that all in and said, no, you're just going to borrow through us and nobody else. So that kind of went away, because what consolidation does is that it takes all the loans that you've ever borrowed under the federal loan program and they make one new loan. And they take all the interest rates that you had on all those loans, find a weighted average and lock you in at that rate, right? So do you know that interest rates change every year on the federal loan program? Every July 1st, that can go up or down. But whatever your rate is on that specific loan, it is fixed. So they will lock you in at that rate, right? So the nice thing about the interest rates on federal loans is that you don't see high and low peaks. It stays pretty constant for the most part, right? So consolidation may not be an option for you, but if you think consolidation would work for you, this is a 30-year term that you're able to do that's available for you as well. And then public service loan forgiveness. because some of you may be nurses, teachers, doctors, some district attorney offices if you want to be an attorney. So if you're working for a not-for-profit organization, public service loan forgiveness was a great option for you, or is a good option for you. Basically, if you're working for a not-for-profit and you're making payments on time for 10 years, whatever balance remains after that 10 years, the federal government will forgive that balance, right? So it is still available today. So take advantage of that if it's available to you and if you qualify. So every year, you're going to notify the federal government to show proof of employment that you're employed full-time at this organization. And they're going to see if that qualifies for public service loan forgiveness, your employment. And every year, for 10 years, you're going to do that. And as long as you make payments on time, then whatever balance remains, the federal government will forgive that balance. And the repayment options that qualify for public service loan forgiveness are the income-driven options, like the IBR, pay as you earn, and the SAVE plan, and the standard repayment term, right? So those are the ones that would qualify for public service loan forgiveness. And then you see at the very bottom there in pink, it's the studentaid.gov website. And then you see the thing that says Loan Simulator, right? So this is a great tool that the federal government put in place. So it basically simulates what your estimated repayment would be on the different repayment plan options that are available. So I would definitely encourage you to use the loan simulator so that you have a good idea of what that payment might look like on all the different repayment options that are there for you. And that way you can budget yourself accordingly to say, okay, based on my budget, this particular payment plan is the one that works best for me. And then for private loans, these are different. You're going to find that these repayment options for private loans, there aren't going to be any income-driven options available for these. These are usually repayment terms of 5, 10, 15, 20, maybe even 25 years on some. It just depends on how much you borrowed. But if ever you have any difficulties in paying back these loans, just contact that lender and let them know that you're having some difficulties because maybe they can put you in a forbearance or a deferment of sorts. Maybe you're doing a residency or an internship. There's deferments for that as well. So just keep in contact with your lender. But again, these repayment terms are usually 5 all the way to 25 to 30 years, depending on how much you borrowed. And then listen, if you have any difficulties at all with your federal loan programs, you do have the option of deferments and forbearance. So both of these are a way of postponing payments for a period of time, right? So I'll start with the deferment because that's always the best option first. The second best option would be a forbearance. So a deferment can be a variety of things that you may qualify for. You have to qualify for deferment in order to get a deferment. So some examples of deferments could be maybe you're an undergraduate student now, and maybe you're thinking about going to grad school. Well, you can do what is called an in-school deferment, where you have to be enrolled at least half time so that you can defer your payments until after you finish graduate school, right? So that is an in-school deferment. But again, you have to apply for and qualify for that deferment. Another deferment can be that maybe you're having a hard time finding a job and you're unemployed. You can do an unemployment deferment option available for you. You have to show proof that you're unemployed, but you have to apply again and see if you qualify. And if you qualify, you can do an unemployment deferment until you're back on your feet and find a job. Another option could be that maybe you do have a job, but your debt to income ratios are really off and you're really struggling in making payments on these loans and all the other debt that you may have. So you can do what is called an economic hardship deferment. Again, you have to show proof of your income and your debt to see if you qualify for an economic hardship deferment. Or maybe you're in the military and you get mobilized. Then you can do what is called a military mobilization deferment, where you don't have to make any payments while you are in active duty, right? So those are the different deferments. So why did I say a deferment is better than a forbearance? Because remember, if you had any subsidized loans, the government pays the interest for you during periods of deferment. So that's why you want to make sure that you see if you qualify for a deferment. But if you don't qualify for a deferment, then the next best option would be a forbearance. This one, you don't have to necessarily officially apply. You simply contact your servicer and let them know that, hey, I didn't qualify for a deferment, but I need to postpone payments for whatever reason, right? So they can put you in a 6 months forbearance or maybe longer, depending on your situation. But again, these are ways to postpone payments. But during a forbearance, it doesn't matter if you have subsidized or unsubsidized, interest is going to be accruing during this period of time of postponement. Now, delinquency and default, which none of you are going to do, there really should be no reason why a student goes into default. You are considered to be in a default status when you are 270 days past due, right? So that's basically 9 months of you not communicating with your servicer and or lender, and now very, very bad things are happening to you. So what happens when you default on a loan? Well, the federal government can sue you. They can garnish your wages. They can, let's say maybe you're waiting for a tax refund check. Well, that refund check is not going to go to you. It's going to go to the federal government to pay down the loan that you defaulted on. Maybe you're a nurse, or maybe your specific profession requires you to have a license, renewal every year. Well, if you defaulted on your student loans, your license will not get renewed because you defaulted on your student loans, right? I always get the question, what about bankruptcy? If I file for bankruptcy, does this go away? It does not. This loan will be with you until the very end, right? Well, I should probably back up because there really is two ways that this loan goes away. It's not the best options, but there are two ways that it goes away. One option is that you die, and the other option is that you become totally and permanently disabled, right? Again, not the best options, but that is the only way that this goes away. So listen, if you're having difficulties whatsoever with making payments, then contact your lender or servicer, right? They're going to try to find a solution. On your federal loan programs, it could be that they will maybe move you to a different repayment plan option that works better for you with your budget. Or maybe they'll look into doing a deferment or a forbearance if you qualify, right? Same thing with private loans. They're going to try to find a solution because the last thing they want is for you to go into default and not pay them back. So they're going to try to find a solution for you. But if you don't keep in contact with them, then all those things that we talked about can very much happen to you. So I want to make sure that you avoid that, right? Because when you default on the student loans, that really affects your credit terribly. And it will lower your FICO score and any lending that can be done for you in the future as well. So just make sure that you keep in contact with your lender and or servicer.
Hey, Sergio,
Yes, ma'am.
we had a question in the chat. Someone asked, how long does each deferment last for?
Yeah, so it just depends, right? It could be 6 months, it could be a year, depending on your situation. If you're unemployed and you're still having difficulties finding a job, you can still apply for an unemployment deferment, maybe every 6 months. Same thing with economic hardship deferments. In-school deferments, that will be based on you being back in school, enrolled at least half time. So it just varies, right? So just, it'll tell you how long you have for a deferment. And then if you still need another one after that, then just contact your servicer and see you qualify for another deferment. That's a great question.
That's all in chat for right now.
All right, perfect. So let's talk about saving you some money, because I want to make sure that you're able to take advantage of this as well. So you want to be debt free as soon as possible, right? So making extra payments is going to help you get there, right? So if you're able to double up on payments here and there, you don't have to do this every month. All you have to do is a minimum that's required of you based on the payment plan that you have requested. But if you're able to make extra payments, try to do so, because again, remember, it'll help to reduce some of that interest that's occurring while you're on repayment as well. And then we talked about this as well, that paying off your loans doesn't affect your credit. I always get that question, well, if I pay it off sooner than later, does that affect my credit in any way? No, it does not. There are no penalties if you pay this off sooner than later. That goes for both federal loans and private loans, which is good, right? And if you wanted to make additional payments, know how it's going to be put into first. It will always go to any fees, and then the interest, and then the principal. So that's the order that the loan payments are typically applied to. And then you want to be in control of your debt, right? So you want to choose a way to pay back this loan and you want to stick to it, right? So if you've chosen a standard term, um, but you realize that, you know what, this is too expensive for me, I can't do this on a monthly basis, then maybe I move to an extended plan of 25 years, and that's okay, you can do that, right? Or maybe now you qualify for an income-driven option and you can do that as well, right? But once you pick that plan, you want to stick to it and make sure that you are able to make time payments on time so that you can qualify for maybe if you're in income-driven options, some balances and maybe forgiven, hopefully moving forward. So what are some ways that you can save money? Is by taking advantage of those repayment incentives that we talked about, right, in the beginning. So the federal government has, and both private loans as well, by the way, offer you a 0.25% interest rate reduction if you sign up for automatic debit. So what does that mean? That means that you are signing up so that your payments are automatically taken out of your checking account or savings account on a monthly basis to make your payment on your student loans. So what are some of the benefits of that, right? Some of the benefits is, of course, it's going to save you some money because it's going to reduce your interest rate because you signed up for this benefit. You won't have to worry about any late fees because you're going to be on time because kind of out of sight, out of mind, but it's getting paid on a timely basis. And it's going to save you time, right? And effort. You don't have to remember, oh, I got to go make a payment. So let me go ahead and set that up. So it was just automatically going to be done for you. And that's probably the best way to do it because then by doing that, again, you get a 0.25% interest rate reduction by doing so. So just some tips to organize yourself on these loans. And we talked a little bit about this in the beginning. Keep a file of all your loan documents. Anything that you received from your lender, whether it be a promissory note, any disclosure letters that you've received, annual debt letters that you've gotten from financial aid or your lender, servicer, any exit interview information that you get from financial aid as well. I would just keep all of that together so that you're fully prepared to go into repayment. And then you want to make sure that you're opening and reading your mail and email, right? Because this is how they're going to notify you to let you know that, hey, we noticed that you're about to graduate and this is when payment is going to occur, right? So if you get something in the mail from somebody like Great Lakes, let's say, and you're thinking, I don't even live in the Great Lakes, I don't know who this is, trash it. Well, that is a servicer, right? So let me talk a little bit about that because I want to make sure you understand that. So although the federal government is the one that is in charge of this program is so large, it's billions and billions and billions of dollars that it requires a third-party servicer to help them administer this program. So those are servicers, they're kind of the ultimate contact. They're the ones who get in contact with you in the beginning, and they're also going to be the ones that collect on behalf of the federal government to pay back your loans, right? So that is your servicer. So there are a variety of different servicers that they partner with. So make sure that you're opening your mail and that you're checking your email for any up-to-date information that they're trying to provide to you. It'll be a good idea to bookmark your student loan servicer's website so you have easy access to it. Create an account if you haven't done so already. That's important. And then any changes in your status whatsoever, you want to make sure that you keep in contact with your lender or servicer, right? So what are some examples? Maybe you move and your address is different. Let your servicer know that. If your social security number changes for whatever reason, or your name changes for whatever reason, let your servicer know that. Ladies, if you get married and change your last name, let your servicer know that as well, right? And then keep important numbers handy, right? So make sure you have your servicer's phone number handy, your private loan lender or bank that you borrowed handy. Financial aid is still a good resource for you if ever you have any questions about your loans. Shalise and Gabby at the Money Management Center, they're also a great resource to help you navigate this as well. So definitely keep in touch with them if you have any questions on your student loans and repayment moving forward. And then just last advice, just, make sure that you just keep in contact with your servicer. If you can create an account with them, that would be great. Download an app if they have one. Just kind of keep it easier. I mean, we do everything on our phones, so why not do the same thing with your student loan payments? That way you can kind of keep track of everything. You can see what your balances are, your payments that you've made, the outstanding balances that are on there. You can change your contact information and a lot of things that you can do on this account. So just make sure that you're able to do that. Easy peasy. And again, if you have any difficulties, just keep in contact with that lender and our servicer, and they will walk you through that process. And then listen, you guys are adults, so I'm not going to go into budgeting and kind of go into the ins and outs of that. But do know that, now that you're about to graduate and go into repayment, you're going to have a new expense, right? That you didn't have before. So it's important that you budget yourself accordingly. Add this new expense that you're going to have, which is student loans. And again, play with that simulator and see what that payment's going to look like so that you can budget yourself accordingly, right? Sallie Mae has some budget worksheets. I'm sure the Money Management Center at Texas Women's also have something as well. This is a PDF pre-fillable that at the end, it'll add it up for you to show you if you're in the red or in the negative. So that way, in the positive or negative. So that way you have a good idea if you're within budget or not, right? But again, you want to make sure that during your grace period, you're doing all of this so that there are no surprises when you go into repayment and that you're able to live comfortably without any stress about not being able to make those payments or stay within your budget. And then for those of you who are about to graduate, again, congratulations, you've made it. So just remember that any changes in your status, any difficulties that you're having, or any questions at all that you have with repayment, keep in contact with your lender and or servicer. They're there to help you to navigate this process and kind of give you some insights of what may be the best option for you. Use that loan simulator that we talked about. That'll probably be the first thing that I would do is go to studentaid.gov, see who my servicer is, see how much I've borrowed, and then look at that simulator to see, okay, based on my budget, this particular payment plan is going to work for me. So let me go ahead and start budgeting myself accordingly based on that information, right? Update your contact information whenever you move. That's very important. That's probably one of the number one reasons students default is that you've moved, you forgot to notify your servicer and sending you information to that old address, and now 9 months has occurred, and now you're in a default status. So just make sure that you update your contact information. Read your statements. Make sure that you understand when repayment's going to come due. Remember, you have a grace period on your loans. So that means that from the day that you graduate, you have 6 months before you go into full principal and interest on these loans. And let me talk a little bit about that because I think I failed to mention this to you as well. So maybe you're a graduate student that's on the line and you took out loans in undergraduate school. Remember, you only get one grace period. So if it took you longer than 6 months to go from undergrad to grad school, and you went into repayment on your undergraduate loans, and now that you're in grad school, you deferred, well, that grace period is gone for your undergraduate loans, right? So that means when you graduate your grad school, you're going to go into repayment as soon as that graduation date. But if you're wanting all your loans to come due at the same time, right, your undergraduate and your graduate loans, then contact your servicer and say, hey, listen, I have undergraduate loans that are going to come due when I graduate, but my graduate loans are not going to come due until 6 months after that date. I would like all my loans to be aligned to make payments at the same time, and they can do that for you. But again, you just need to contact them. If you're not sure if you've lost your grace period or not, go to studentaid.gov. It'll tell you if you have a grace period on those loans or not. And then reach out again to your servicers if you have any questions whatsoever. That's what they're there for. There is no judgment on this side to say, why aren't you making payments? We really don't care what's happening. What they care about is that you make your payments on time and that they find a solution for you so that you don't go into default, right? So again, any issues that you're having, any difficulties, keep in contact with your lender servicer. They will help you find a solution either through a different repayment plan or through deferment or forbearance to help you out as well. So we covered quite a bit today. So I want to make sure that we leave enough time for any questions that you may have for me. Remember, financial aid is here as well. They can help you answer some of those questions, but why don't I stop sharing my screen and come back to you all and see what questions you have for us tonight.
Thank you so much, Sergio. There was some great information in there, you guys. So many tips, and we're very grateful for all that. It was really a robust presentation. So thank you. And so if you guys want to get off of mute and just ask Sergio a question, or if you prefer to type it in the chat like we did earlier, please feel free. This is your opportunity. You are meeting with the experts tonight. So who has a question about anything concerning their loans or financial aid? Again, if you want to talk about something specific, we prefer that you contact one of the financial aid counselors directly. But who has a question? Anybody?
Hey, Sergio, I'll start. So I
Sure.
had a student in the chat directly message me. I did answer, but I wanted to see if you could kind of talk about it. She mentioned she graduates in December. She only took one class this semester. She recently heard that if she took one class, that puts me in a grace period. So her question was, would I start making payments in January? And of course, I said, well, as long as you enroll in, Title IV 6 hours next semester, then you wouldn't, your loans can go back in deferment again, but you're using some of that grace period. Can you elaborate on that for me?
Yeah, exactly. So if you just maybe need 3 hours to graduate, so that will be considered you to be less than half time. So whenever you're less than half time, then if it takes 6 months from one semester to the other, then that grace period is basically that time where you were less than half time, right? So, and remember, you get one grace period only. So what will happen is if you have other loans that are coming due later on, then you can ask them to align your loans to come due at the same time. But remember, you have to be enrolled at least half time, 6 hours, as Brandy said, to be considered half time so that you don't go into grace period and then repayment. Because in this scenario, let's say that you were enrolled for 3 hours for this semester. So that's August, September, October, November, December, almost 5 months, right? But it's not your full 6 months, right? So that means that if you enroll again next semester for 6 hours, you will still have a 6 months grace period available for you. It's as long as you haven't exhausted your full 6 months that you'll be able to keep your 6 months grace period. Does that answer the question, Brandy?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody else want to chime in and have any questions about, like, if you take a class, just one class this semester, that's all you need to graduate, but then be enrolling in 6 hours, and that's for undergrad. By the way, for grad, it's 5 hours at TWU. Okay, it's considered half time unless you're working on an approved class like a dissertation, thesis, or a professional paper statement. There are some classes that are approved for half time for just one class for grad students. We got a message. Nope. Okay.
Anything
right.
else? Any
Anything?
questions about grace periods, deferments, forbearances, the repayment plan options?
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so for the grace periods, are we allowed to like make any payments for our loans, right?
Yeah, you can. You're not obligated to do so. But if you're able to make payments during that grace period, you can. It's not going to make you automatically go into repayment. And there's no penalties for you doing that. But if you wanted to make payments during your grace period, you can, but you're not obligated to do so.
Okay, so if I take my grace period, because I graduate in the spring of 26, so if I take
Okay.
my grace period after I graduate, and because when I looked at the studentaid.gov, like it says that I have a due date. Is that like the due date to pay all my loans?
Is the due date that on there, is it telling you when you'll fully complete making payments on your loans, or is that the due date of when you're going to go into repayment?
I'm not sure because it just says upcoming payments and it just says like it gives me like an actual date for it. So I don't know if that's
And
the
what is the
actual
date that it's giving you?
April 13th of 2027.
And you're graduating when? Spring of 2025?
Of 26.
What was that?
Of 26.
Of 26. Okay.
Yeah.
So spring of 26. So that means from that date of, let's say, May of 2026, you have a 6 months grace period, remember that sometimes the schools have you graduating at a certain time, but once you officially graduate, they're going to report to your servicer and or lender to say that this is her graduation date, right? So when they get that information, it's going to be 6 months from that date that you graduated when you go into repayment.
Oh, okay. So like I can make a payment basically after I graduate, and then along with it will still give me more time for me to pay it off, right?
Right. So remember, while you're in school, you don't have to make any payments. If you can, I would definitely encourage you to do so because it minimizes some of that interest, right? But again, you don't have to make any payments while you're enrolled in school. You don't have to make any payments during grace. So it'll basically be 6 months after you graduate before you start making full principal and interest payments on your loans.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, you're very welcome. Any other questions?
So if you make the payments prior to the graduation, then are you paying on the principal but not interest? Do all
You are,
those payments go towards your principal?
yeah, so any payments that you send early, it's going to go to any fees and then interest and then principal.
Okay.
You can specify to that servicer or lender that you want it to go to principal, but you would have to do it in a check, write out a note, and let them know that you want them to do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
These are great questions, and then definitely take advantage if possible, if you can. If you have a loan that's accruing interest, to try to pay that interest monthly. That's definitely going to help you in the long run. And the Student Money Management Center is definitely a resource for you to reach out. We can help you look at a budget, set up a budget, and go to your servicer and go to studentaid.gov and work with you on that. And like Sergio said, any of us here on the call at TWU in the financial aid office or in the SMMC, we can help you look at the loan calculator and try to help you determine when you do go into repayment, what is going to be the ideal repayment plan for you. And like he said, if you don't choose a repayment plan, you're going to go into the standard plan, which is the 10 years. So a lot of great information here tonight. Anybody else have any questions? I'm so glad you guys are hanging on with us. I want to give everybody an opportunity. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and advance this slide here. These are some financial aid resources here at TWU. Obviously, the FAFSA and the TASFA are in there, the studentaid.gov, and then there's some phone numbers and the locations of some offices that you may want to visit or call upon or email us. As always, I'll follow the Student Money Management Center on Instagram. I want to tell you there will be a short 6-question anonymous survey as soon as you log off from this session. Please answer it. It's really quick. It helps us improve our presentations. It helps us understand if what we're presenting to you is worthwhile, and so we can continue to offer great programming for you. And a week from, I guess it was a week from yesterday, so Monday, November the 18th, I'm going to plug our next program from 6 to 7 in the evening. We have another one of these webinar information sessions, and it's going to be a beginner's guide to your income taxes. We have Dr. Megan Burke. She's coming back from our College of Business, and she's going to be presenting about the basics about income taxes, which I learn something from her every time I hear her speak. Thanks everybody for participating. Again, yes, congratulations to those of you who are graduating in December. All the best. And I'm going to go ahead and we're going to stop recording and end the Zoom, and just wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you, Sergio.
You're welcome.